Okay. So to the Mishnah. Naira shenishpatza, a Naira who was seduced. Boishta ukama uknasa. The boishes, which is the mammon, ukama is mammon, uknasa, and the 50 shkolim, shelavia, go to her father. The vat tsar, betfusa, and if she was an anusa, then even the tsar goes to the father. Amda bedin, at shaloi meisa. So what happens if the event occurred, either the pitoy or the anus happened, and they went straight to bed, and the father was there. So Arei and Shalav, the father gets the money.
We talking about psak, the psak din, or just entering the court?
I believe the psak din. I believe the psak din. I believe it's the psak. Let's hear what Rashi says. If Rashi says, Rashi is later on in the Mishnah, so I assume it means the psak, because the next step that the Mishnah discusses is the actual payment. So it seems like Amad B'din must be the psak, because it's not mamain until let's hear Rashi says, Ein Adam Moshe L'Bnoi Schus Shezach Shalai Torah V'Vita. Right. So if it's just a schus that the Torah was mazaket to him, the Torah you can't be merged to your children. You can only be merged to your children once it's already paskened that it's by you. Keep them the amda bedin zacha b'enav. So I assume that must mean that it was paskened already, because just in the negotiations of Vesson, I'm not sure why that would change the status. Because we're going to find. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says weiter, Ad shalom meisa'av, then harei and shalav. And if meisa'av, harei and shalachin. And then if the father dies after the hamad bedin, then it will go to the achin. But lo yispeak alamad bedin, ad shemeisa'av. But if the father died first, then the achin don't have a schus, harei and shal atzma, she gets to keep the kanas on all of the payments herself. Rashi says, Meisha'av, Misha Amda Badin, the father died after Hamad Badin, Bain Benai Reisel, Bain Bugger Kaid Misha, Bain Neuberger, Harei Shalachin, even the Amda Badin, once there was Hamad Badin, and it was paskin already that the father is entitled to the knas, Zacha Behenahav, we say that the father was Zeichedet, and therefore he could be Moirish this knas to his children. What happens if it was the Bedin actually Boka? The Hamada Bedin was before she became a Bagris. Harei and Shalaf, the Av gets it, and then Meisa'av, if the father dies after the Hamada Bedin, Harei and Shalach. But what happens if it's like his Pika Lamoid Bedin Achaboka? By the time they went to Bezdin, she was already a complete adult. Then the father no longer gets it. Harei and Shalatzma, they belong to her. Reb Shimon. Yes, that's right. Rashi brought it because when we had the shaila of Yesh Rava cleared Yesh Bugger, Rashi said that if she was alive and she became a Buggerist, the Mishnah here says that it's Harei Shalatzma. So Reb Shimon says, "Im lo yispeak a ligvois." Even if Bezdin already paskin that the father is entitled to that knas, it's still not considered that the father has it, and therefore he can be married to his children until he actually has it in his hand. Rashi says, Reb Shimon Omer, until he actually has the money in his hands. With the Gemara Yol of Taima, the Gemara is going to bring a pasuk to tell us, because if you think once Bez paskin that someone is chayiv the money, so now it's not knas anymore. Now it's mominus. Bez paskin that someone owes me money, so it's mine now. So there's a special chiddush that says that when it comes to this knas of the anus or the mafuta, we don't consider it the father's until he has the cash in his hands. Okay. What about the products that a girl creates, such as if she works, the money that she earns, or mitziyasa that she finds, even if it was not yet collected. So she worked, but she didn't get her paycheck yet for this week. And Mesa Av, Hare and Shalachin, because that already is not a knas, that's mominus itself. And Rashi says, even though nobody money anything, could go in Tzchar Pa'ula, nevertheless, Mesa Av Hare Shalachim, the Mishabala Oilam, once they're in this world, Zachaboya Av, the father was already Zoichenit. It's not like knas, to have a moment. It's not really monetized in his hand. Until he was Ahmad Bidin, v'ya'idu, and they're mechayvim. The Himaida Mifter. Oh, so Rashi saying another reason why it's not his until Bezdin Paskins. Because if this fellow would be Maida, he would be parted from the Knas. So not only is it not potentially his, it might not even be potentially his, because there's still an opportunity for the person to become potter from it. I wanted to announce that the broadcast for this week is sponsored by Rav Jackie Ganz, and I was wanting to set up the Ilu Nishmas, who it's for. I'm trying to see if I can find it.
It's in honor of the Rav and his entire family for all the Torah that they bring to the world.
This week's post Tu Bav broadcasts of all of the Aguda Broadcasting Company's broadcast is sponsored by the Ganz family in order of Rabbi Lowy Shlita and his entire family who bring Torah and Brocha to Klal Yisroel. Okay, gewaltig. Zot the Heilige My Kamashmalon. What is the chiddush of this brisa? Tanina, we already lived it in the brisa. Hamafata noishin shloisha dvarim. This is a mishnah that we just learned. The Mafata gives three things, which is Pagam, Boishes, as well as the Knas. The Oynis Arba, because he gives Tsar as well. Mafata noishin Boishes Pagam Uknas. Moishe v'lavoynish shenoishin Zatzar. Leavia. So why do I need the Mishnah here to tell me what is the Knas and what are the payments of a Mafata? What is the Knas and what are the payments of a Ma'anis? We already looked at it in the Mishnah earlier. The reason why our Mishnah has to tell to you is because our Mishnah needs to tell you that the payments go to the father. But it's pashut as well that it goes to the father. Because it goes to the mafata. Rashi says, from the fact that there's any type of payment from a fata at all, proves that it must go to the father. We already said by Mefuta, she's not entitled to any of those payments if they would be going to her herself, because Mefata, why would the Mefata get that money? I'm sorry, Mefata midaita. She was a willing participant. So from the mere fact that the Brisa says that a Mefata gets anything at all is proof positive that the payment must be Lavia and not to her. So once again, what is the Chiddush of our Mishnah? The Chiddush of our Mishnah is the halacha of Amda Badin, because it's plukted Rab Shimon v'Rabbanan. Our Tanakama says once it's Amda Badin, the money is considered to be the father's, and therefore, if he dies, his sons are in it. And Rab Shimon held that even if there was Hamada Badin, the money is not considered the father's, and therefore, if the father died before he actually had the money in his hands, the money would go to her and not to her brothers. So that's the Chiddush of our Mishnah. Tanan Hasan. Onasta ufitisas biti. The Brisa says, if someone comes along and says, you were either ma'anis or you were mafata, my daughter, so you have the father of a girl that's being teveya, the perpetrator, the hu aimer, and he denies it. Loyo nasti, veloy petisi. And then he said, Mashpiacha ani. So this is already like Shavuos of the Kodin. I'm being mashpia you. Make a shvua that you didn't do this. And he actually said amen. The achaka and then the perpetrator was moida. In fact, that he was mefata or was ma'anis. Chayiv, he'll be chayiv. Rashi says chayiv not tam to pay the regular payments. Rather chayiv keren v'chaymish v'osham. He has to bring an osham as well. Im hoida acher if he was moida v'zo asham gzelos. This is the carbon of asham gzelos. If someone won somebody for something that he took, and the person denies it with a shvua, and then he's moida, he has to be keren v'chaymish v'osham. And it says over here, in this case, you have to be keren v'chaymish v'osham, and Reb Shimon pater, and Reb Shimon paters. Why? She'enim mishalem knas al piatzman, because you don't pay knas al piatzman. And Rashi says, what does that mean? Ella al piedim. We know moida b'knas is pater. So he would have never been mechuyev to pay knas before Adam came. Have a mifter, and since if he would have been moida when he was first approached by the father, and he would have said, "Yes, you're right. I was manish your daughter. Yes, you're right. I was mafata your daughter." Then he would have been mechuyev. He would have been pater because of moida b'knas pater. He kafir in ami, even though he initially denied and made a shvua that he didn't owe any type of money for that. And then later on he was moida, ein zu shvuas kfiris moment. That's not called a shvu of kfiris moment because he was being kaifer, a knas which he could have been moida on, and therefore he's potter even now from a carbon shvua. Amr loy, the Chachamim told Reb Shimon, I understand one portion of what this discussion was about might have been knas, but there's other payments involved when someone is being Taiveya, his friend, Anasta Vitisas Biti. There are payments of Mamonis as well. So Amr Loy, they told Reb Shimon, Knas Al Piatzamai. So granted, because of the Knas alone, maybe there would be no Korban Shvua, because in fact, if he would have been Moida originally, he would have been Potter on the Knas. Aval Mashalim Boishish will become Al Piatzamai. So at least because of the Boishish and the Bekam, let this person be Mechuyev for having denied that chiyuv to pay, as well as swearing. But Rashi the mamanu, that everybody agrees is regular nezek. The mamanu kafir. So come to Chosh, when he's denying that he was ma'anaser, or he's denying that he's a fatah, he's not just denying his chiyuv knas, he's denying all of the payments, even of mammon, that he would have been mechuyev. Ulakamon mefarish, taima derabbanan, and soon the rabbanan are going to be mefarish, because Savri Stam Toyin Onasta Loitavoy Elaboshis of the God. The Rabbanan hold that when someone is mourning someone for being Ma'anis' daughter, his main focus is the bushes of the Begam. He's not concerned about the Knas, he wants the bushes and the Begam. V'loy nish bezeh al kviris Knas. So come to Chayz, this person's Shvua was never on the Knas, because that's never what the discussion was about. Rabbi Shimon is going to hold that the discussion was about Knas as well, and that's why he's part of him Korban Shvua. So Abaye asked Rabbi Ashayla, if someone tells his friend, Onasta ufitisa asbiti, and v'hamadatich b'din, and I have already taken you to the Torah, and Bezin already paskin that you're mechuyev to pay all of the tashlumin, including the knas, and they were mechayev you to pay me all of the necessary payments. And then and then of course because he's claiming nothing ever happened, so surely there was not even a hamodah b'din. And of course there was never a chiyah for me to pay you any of the tashlumins. And then Vinishban, he swore Allah Hadam, and then Vahoida, and then he was moed in fact that all of the above occurred, including the Hamodah B'din. L'Rab Shimon Mai, what would Rab Shimon hold? Does the payment that was originally a Knas, which became Aman once Bezdin Paskin that is mechuyev to pay the Knas, maybe now it already is considered a kfiris of Mammon. My, even the Amad Bedin, Mamayna Hava. Once there was already Hamad Bedin, so maybe now even the payment of Knas converts to Mammon, Umechayev Alei Carbon Shvua, and therefore the denier, the perpetrator, will be Mechayev Carbon Shvua and to pay an extra Chaymish. Like Rashi says, even the Amad Bedin Kfar, he was already my Amad Bedin. We have a Moida like Hamon, and if he would be Moida now, yes, indeed, there was Hamad Bedin and Amachuyev, have a Mishalim. He would have had to pay even the Knas, because this is not called Moida B'Knas. Shekvar Chayviu Bezdin Arishain Al Piedim, because he was already Mechuyev, Bezdin Arishain was already Mechayev him, due to the Eidim that came at that point. So therefore, Hashta Mammon a Kafir, Mechayev. So now when he denied it, he's already being Kafir Mammon. Or Zok Gemara, Oidilma, Afagav, the Amad Bedin, Knas Hava. Even though there was a Amad Bedin, maybe still Knas, which Rashi explains, Oidilma, Afagav, the Amad Bedin, the Imoida have a Mechayev. At this point, if he was Moida, he would be Mechayev. Afilu Hachile Mechayev the Kfirasoi Carbon Shvua. You're still not going to be Mechayev with his Kfira Carbon Shvua. Why? A Chiddush, Hoyov Ikriknas. Even though right now it's Mammon, but since the source of this Chiyav Mammon is Knas, V'leichayva Torah Carbon Shvua Ella Alapikadan Ususu Mashad the Chiyotaben. Maybe it's a halach in Carbon Shvua. Maybe the Torah is only mechayev somebody a Carbon Shvua on money that came from money, not money that ever came from Knas. So maybe the whole parsha of Carbon Shvua was not even said on money that was originally a Knas. So that's the shayla. Mike, even though within Mammon Havoyu mechayev a Carbon Shvua, I don't know afagav within Knas Avi. Omerlei. So Rabba answered, Mammon Hava. It's Mammon, and therefore Mechayev Elei Carbon Shvua, and therefore there'll be a Chiv Carbon Shvua. So there's no such chiddush in the Allah of Carbon Shvua that you have to look at the origins of what created the Chiv. Did it come from Knas or did it come from Mammon? That's not relevant. You look at the time of the Kvira. Was there a Chiv Mammon? And in fact, if there was Hahamad B'din on the Knas, then at the time of the Kvira, in fact, there was a Chiv Mammon, and therefore all the halachas of Carbon Shvua would apply, including the carbon and the Karen Mechanish. Zok the Helig Gemara Vati. Eisvei, frag the Gemara Akashi. I'm just going to stop for 1 second because I have to turn on the big screen now.
Yosy, why can't we see the class?
That's what I'm turning on now.
Yeah.
Yes, as a Saranga came in, Udem Gudel, Chushaviyid, to do us the same.
Chaim, I'm so happy that you realize that seeing another Yid learn is the same as looking as a line of Gemara.
No, because I don't have like notice. I'm learning from the screen, but I don't see you. You're behalten. I only see the GSL, whatever. Kam zoom letoy. Wer das Mati?
Ah, it's Shmuel.
Yes, Shmuel.
Okay, Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter.
Welcome.
Ah, geweldig. Alle erlige Jidelen. Okay. So Amalei Mammon have a Machayv. Eisvei fragt the Gemara. Eisvei, Reb Shimon said, Yochal Omer lechaver nastu v'tisas biti. But who Omer lo nastu v'lo pitisi? You would have thought that if someone made a denial of an usar mafuta, or another case, hey mishar chesavdi, someone is approached your shar, killed my evet. Who Omer lo haimis? Another case of knas. Oy shamer lo avda he palta eshini. Or Visimisa saying that a person's owner ever told him, you have to let me go free because you were mapping one of my Chavdal Rosh Evar. Who Emir Loyapalti, Veloisimisi. And Vinishpa, and either the Adon swore or the perpetrator swore, or the owner of the ox swore, Vahoida, and then he was Moida, in fact, that yes, it did occur. I would have had a Havamina to say that this person is chayiv, Talmud Loimer, v'kichesh ba'misai, a person denies to his friend, b'pikadain, oy b'sesum misyad, oy v'gazel, oy oshak esamisai, oy matzah veda, v'kichesh ba, v'nishba, al sheker. Ma'elu, just like all of the items in the list that the Torah is talking about. When the Torah is machayiv a carbon shvua, Amar Yechodim. They are unique. Why? Shehin Mammon. They're not Knossos at all. They're all Mammon. Af Kol Shehin Mammon. So too, any payment that's Mammon, there's a din of Korban Shvuah. Yatu Elu Shein Knas. So this is excluding the earlier list, Nasti, Petisi, Hemisharchas Avdi, or Hepalte Shinai. All of these that are Knas, they're not subject to the Korban Shvuah, the Karen, the Chaimish.
The master, the origin is take Mammon. Aber dort like the Torah to Knas from Karen v'choimish, no?
Yeah, that's true. That's not a problem. The Torah gave a Knas for someone who denied Mammon. So, for the Gemara, my love, the pashtus of the brisa is in those cases that even if there was a hamad b'din on the oinus, on the mafuta, on the rashi verb, even if there was a hamad b'din, even there in those cases, Reb Shimon considers it a knas and there's no din korban shvuah, which will be a kasha on Rabbi's psak. So after Marloi b'shaloi amad b'din, that's only speaking b'shaloi amad b'din. But if it was amad b'din, avada, there would be a din korban shvuah like Rabbi's psak. Let's see Rashi. My love b'shamad b'din bebezdin echad. In one bezdin there are amad b'din ubo edim ba'isha bezdin v'chavu bezdin alpiyam. So the knas already transitioned into a chiv moment. The achs of jet toivai, and now someone's warning him about mashachavu bezdin. Now he's saying bezdin paskin, you owe me these payments, so please pay me. And then the chos of the kafar, which is exactly the case that Rabbi paskin on, that is chayiv, and this brayso says potter. So Gemara, no, this brayso is speaking b'shaloi amud b'din, v'adayin lo ya'idu edim. But avada, if there were edim already, and he was mechuyev, the psak would be that he's chayiv the keren b'chol mishpash. Frek the Gemara, v'hami the reisha b'shamud b'din, the reisha of this case, which we're going to soon quote, is speaking in a case where there was already hamad b'din, seifa nami b'shamud b'din. The seifa you also have to say is b'shamud b'din, and if the seifa is b'shamud b'din, which is the case that we just quoted, then it's going to be shver and rabbah. Where do you see the reisha speaking b'shamud b'din? The katani reisha. The reisha says as follows: Ainli ela dvarim shemishalman alayim es hakeret. I would only think that there's a chiyuv of korban shvuah for things that you pay on a keret. Tashlum kevel, tashlum abav chamisha, ba'oinas, ba'mafata u'motishamra minayin. How do you know that all of these knossos also have it in korban shvuah? Talmud loymar u'ma la'ma. Riba. So let's think about this. It's saying here that it seems like all these knossos also have a chiyuv of korban shvuah. Hey Chadami, what's the case? Either lo yamad b'din, if there was no hamad b'din, kfeilo me'ika, how is there ever a chiyuv kefil if there was no hamad b'din? The chiyuv kefil comes by the hamad b'din. Elo pshita b'shamad b'din. It must be speaking in a case where there was already hamad b'din. Umidereisha b'shamad b'din, well then say fenami b'shamad b'din. Zok Rashi. Umidereisha milsayu d'Rabbanan, the fligi olayu. The reisha is not a different case. The reisha is the opinion expressed by the Rabbanon who argue on Reb Shimon. V'chayvu korban shvuah, and the Rabbanon, as we know from our mission as well, are mechayiv a korban shvuah, for knossos. And where the Rabbanon are mechayiv a korban shvuah for knossos, ari b'shamad b'din. It must be seeking b'shamad b'din. Because if it wasn't the Shamad B'din, nobody would hold that there'd be a Chiv korban shvuah. So if in the Reisha speaking b'Shamad B'din, and there the Rabbanon say you're Chayiv a korban shvuah, so where Reb Shimon argues, it must be arguing on the same case for which the Rabbanon pater. Mechlal the Seifa, claiming Reb Shimon doesn't laflugi alai b'dechavosa ayri. It's of course mustaber to say that Reb Shimon and the Rabbanon who are arguing are obviously arguing in the same case. And the Rabbanon who say there's a chiyuv korban shvuah is speaking b'shamad b'din. So in that same case, Reb Shimon would have to hold that there's no korban shvuah. So this is Shver and Rabbah who said in Reb Shimon there would be a korban shvuah if it was already after hamad b'din. Amar lei. So Rabbah said you can't ask me a kasha because yechilin l'shnuyalach. I could answer you as follows: Reisha b'shamad b'din, v'seifa b'shalayamad b'din. I can tell you that there's a difference between the Reisha and the Seifa. In the Reisha there was a mother b'din, and in the Seifa there was no mother b'din. V'chulu Reb Shimoni, and it's all going according to Reb Shimon. Maybe the whole price is going according to Reb Shimon. Why might you argue and say that Reb Shimon only started speaking in the Seifa? Because at the beginning of the Seifa, it says Reb Shimon Aimer. But I'll say that Reb Shimon Aimer, although it says that on the Seifa, the whole brisa is going according to Reb Shimon. But I'm not going to answer you a doichik dike teretz, because then you're going to respond back to me, Lishna Reisha Reb Shimon Aimer. Either the Reb Shimon Aimer shouldn't have just been in the Seifa, which indicates that now Reb Shimon just started talking. It should have said Reb Shimon Aimer at the beginning of the whole Mishnah. And then we would have said that Reb Shimon Aimer, that after Hamad B'din, there is a din carbon shvua, and before Hamad B'din, there's no din carbon shvua. Oilis ni Seifa divrei Reb Shimon. Or it should have said the whole Seifa, and then it should have said divrei Reb Shimon, and we would have said, once again, that Reb Shimon is the author of the entire brisa. But now that it says Reb Shimon in the middle, it's very hard for me to make such an argument. So therefore, what am I going to have to answer? I'm going to have to tell you that the whole brisa is kashamad b'din, which then makes it shver. You see, Reb Shimon holds, even if it was hamad b'din, the brisa says there's still not going to be a chiyuv of carbon shvua. Zok the Gemara, v'reisha rabbanon v'sefer Reb Shimon. You also have to say that the reisha is the rabbanon, the sefer is Reb Shimon. But umaydinalach le'inyin carbon shvua the rachmana patre mivikichesh. Zokt Reb Shimon, I agree to you that even though in our Mishnah, Reb Shimon holds that it's a moment like Risha Levanov, the Knesset says, and if he dies, it goes to the father. But a carbon shvua is different. A carbon shvua, it says the word vikichesh, and therefore, even though there was a mother b'din, there will not be a carbon shvua. So let's see Rashi. Umaydina lachlin carbon shvua. To Reb Shimon, af agav the amad b'din loy mechayev alei carbon shvua. Even though Reb Shimon holds that even though there was a mother b'din, there's no chi of carbon shvua. It's still mammon. V'chi kamina mammon have that Reb Shimon said that it's considered his own mammon already. Once there's a mother b'din, that's only laharisha levan. So trash laharisha levan. Mishamad b'din umeis. Once there was a hamad b'din on a knas, and then the person died, actually his voice, even though he had not yet collected on it, hareyu shalacheha v'loy shalom. Her brothers will yarshin it because we will say that it belonged to the father. So Reb Shimon is moida by carbon shvua. It's different because it says v'kichesh, and there will not be a din carbon shvua on somebody who denies a payment that was originally knas. Where did Reb Shimon say that once there's hamad b'din, it's considered mammon? That's only l'risha levan. Eis ve'freik the Gemara. Reb Shimon Omer, im lo yispika ligvois acha meisa. It says.
Rebbe, 1 sec. I don't understand. What's that from the kichesh? As no tome, only if it's mumma, not knas, then somebody that denies something that's only it's originally mumma. Why?
There was originally a knas. There won't be a din of carbon shvua.
Even if it's not already mumma because Bezin passed.
Correct.
How do you say it from the kichesh?
Maybe it's an extra word. I don't know what the limud is. Zok to Gemara. Reb Shimon Omer, in Malay speak of ligvois acha meisa, which is our Mishnah. If they didn't have enough time to actually be goyve the knas until the father died, haray and shalatzim. Right? That's what Reb Shimon said on the Mishnah. The amrit mammon havala risha lebanav. And if you want to say that Reb Shimon holds that once there's a mother b'din, it's considered, the knas is considered mammon larisha levanov, well then la'atzma amai. Why does she get to keep it if there was already hamad b'din, just because they weren't goyve yet? The achen boy mahava, it should belong to the brothers. Based on what we're saying, that even Shimon agrees that it's considered mammon larisha levanov. So why in the Mishnah does Reb Shimon say that even though there was Hamad B'din, but if the father didn't collect on it, the father will not be Morishit to his children. Zok to Gemara, Amarava, Hai Milsa Kashoiba Rabbi Reb Yosef Esra the Tartan Shnin. This was a kasha that we saw that we mitched. Rabbi and Reb Yosef have been mitched with this kasha for 22 years. Because Rabbi learned that Reb Shimon held that there was no din, carbon shvua, because of the kichesh, on something that started off with knas, but he learned that it is his moment, Larisha Levanov, yet this Mishnah here by us says that it's not his moment, Larisha Levanov. And no one was able to find the teretz to this difficult kasha. Zok to Gemara, Ad the Yosef Reb Yosef Baresha, until Reb Yosef became the Rosh Hashiva, Upirka, and he came up with the teretz. And I think some of the Mefarshim say that after Rabbi died and Reb Yosef took over, I guess the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him this Sata Shmaya to get a teretz, so that it would allow him to exert his authority. People would be able to would understand. As Rashi says, Esrin utartin shnin. These 22 years were the years that Rabbi was Rosh Hashiva, Umeis, and then Rabbi died. The Yosef Rabbi Yosef Barosh, and Rabbi Yosef became the Rosh Hashiva. V'sayu min hashamayim leferka. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave him a special shot of the Shmaya that he should be able to for this kasha that everybody knew we were stuck with. Why? Liyas to l'shem, to build himself up. Rabbi was a gewaltige chorif, and it was difficult for people to then accept Rabbi Yosef as their Rebbe. That's why Rabbi was referred to as an Oikaharim. He could find for his kashas and spears. For Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef was a very big bookie. Mishnah, Ubraisa, Lakakaru Sinai. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that Rabbi Yosef should also be a lamdin, so that people in the yeshiva would accept him. And he answered the kasha. And how did he answer the kasha? Zok to Gemara, Upirka Shiny Hasam. The Omar Kra, the pasuk says, "V'nosana ish hashoychev ima lavi anayra chamishim kosov." Why did it say lavi anayra? To tell us a chiddush davka by the knas of Onis and Mafata that leizichse Torah la'av elo mishas nesina. The Torah was only mizaka the money to Rav, even though every other knas, like Kefil, Dalvei, and every other knas that you find, the moment there's hamad b'din, it's considered the moment. But the knas of Onis and the knas of Mafata, they're different. They're only belonging to the father, l'gabi Marisha Levanov, only once it actually reaches his hands. V'chika Amar Rabba Mama Nahava Larisha Levanov, that's only b'shar knossos. And that Rabba said that once there's a mother b'din, knas is his, and it can even be Marisha to his children. That's not by every knas. That's not by every knas. It does not apply. It does not apply to the knas of Onis and Mafat. Zok Rashi, V'chika Amar Rabba Mama Nahava Larisha Mishamad b'din, that's only b'shar knossos. But when it comes to the knas of Onis and Mafata, that is different.
I have a good story. From Rosh Hashiva, but I'll tell it after the Shia.
By Evet it says, Kesef shloishim shkolim yitin la'adoinov. If you're telling me that since it says v'nosan ha'ish ha'shoichev lavi naira, so for the fact that it says he has to give it, that tells you that it's not his until it's in the father's hands. Well, then by another knas, like shloishim shkolim, there's also such a nusach in the Torah. It says yitin la'adoinov. So hachanami la'zichse Torah la'adoin ela mashas nesina. Is that what you're going to say? That by shkolim as well, he can't be nourished to his children until he actually has it in his hand? So tomorrow, no, yitain lechud v'nosan lechud. The word yitin mashma loshen tzivoy. It should be given, ula, meaning forever it should be given. Even if the father dies, it should be given to the children. But v'nosan mashma dover anosan kfar. V'nosan is mashma, it's already his. Only something that's already his could he be moirish. If he doesn't have it in his hand, dafka the knas and oinus and mefata, then He can't be margin. Ihachi. So Rashi, Ihachi, the shiny knas, the oinus and mefata, mishar knosses. Now that you're making a distinction, Rabbi, between the knas of oinus and mefata, that it's only his once it's in his hands. Tafilu omad bedin nami lav mamanahu. So, Frank Gemara, Talmud Loimer v'kichesh. What does it say in the Brisa? Why Reb Shimon said that there's no din carbon shvuah? Because of v'kichesh. And Chaim didn't even know how you see it from v'kichesh is halacha. But it's not v'kichesh. Vitmiya. Claimer my area the nosav lashas livtura mi v'kichesh. Why is it that the Gemara said earlier that the reason why Reb Shimon holds is potter from the carbon shvuah is because of v'kichesh? Ki heichi the yolav shark nosus. Claimer. What did he say? It's not doima. These items are not doima to sesumas yad. Lamahave ikar tchilosei mammon. Since the ikar chiyuv for all of the items in the brisa were not mammon, rather they started off with a chiyuv knas. Tepik lei the hashinami lav mammanahu. You could say even stronger that now they're not mammon. Rechmon amar v'nosan. The lezichsa leitayra at shas nesina. So when we're talking about the knas of oinus and mefata, we have a much stronger reason why it's not moment yet, and why if you make a shvuah on it, there's no chiyuv carbon shvuah, because it's not even his yet. Amarava ki itzrich v'kichesh for a different case. Going to amdu bedin ubagra umesa. She was already oimid bedin, and she became a boigris. And then she died. The hasam kikayaris avia minadi dakayaris. There it's different because for her, she's there still. So Drashiki itrich v'kichesh leknas the oinus upitui. Why do we need the kichesh for the knas of oinus upitui if a nosan tells you that until it's in the father's hands, it's not his? So therefore, when someone's swearing, he's not swearing on mammon, he's only swearing on knas. He needs it limilfinu b'hadishar knasos livtura. We need the kichesh when even the knas of oinus and mefata would already be similar to the other knossos. Why is that? Be the kichesh mishum the ikran knas all the other knossos you wouldn't know from v'nosan because v'nosan is something that we're only applying to oinus and mefata, and there's a case of oinus and mefata that's also similar to the other knossos, where you don't have the problem of a nosan. And where is that? Going to Amda Bedin Ubogra. Here you have there's a Amda Bedin and she became a boigris. The Reb Shimon Didahu. According to Reb Shimon, once she becomes a boigris, the knas would go to her. The Chehechi the Polig b'Masnisin, v'lo hispik ligbois atcha mesa av, hachanami Polig v'lo hispik ligbois atcha bogra. Reb Shimon holds even in the case where they didn't collect until she became a bageris, the Tanakama Rein Shalav, the Tanakama said that belongs to the father. Reb Shimon Harei Shalatma. According to Reb Shimon, if the Hamad didn't happen when she was a naira, but the payment didn't happen until she became a boigris, then she'll get it. The Mesa Acher came, so she got the payment because by the time the perpetrator paid, she was already a boigris, so she gets the payment. Like because Shimon says, because of a noson, it's not the father's until he gets the money. And if he didn't get the money and she became a boigris in between, then she'll get the money. So what happened was she got the money and then she died. The Mesa Acher Kain Yoris La'avia Mikoyach Dida. Now, because she died, her father yarshened it from her because of a regular Yerusha. The father yarshens his daughter. Have a mom and gomer. And now it's mom and gomer by the father because the father yarshened it from his daughter. The avagav delaymot liyada, even though it didn't reach the hand of the father, because this halacha that it doesn't belong to the father until it reaches the hand of the father, that's only for the father. But for the daughter, it doesn't say v'nosan l'gabi the daughter. So the payment to the daughter is considered her money that she could even be nourished to her father, even before she actually got it into her hand. The l'gabi dida will have a shiny mishar knossos. L'gabi her, the knas of oinus and mefata is no different than any other knas. The mishas hamad b'din mamanahu. That once there's a hamad b'din, it's considered mammon. So therefore, it's hers. V'chimaisa, when she dies, yoris hu kol schush shahayalebo. Now he could yashin it, even though he didn't get it, because he's not getting it through his own right, which only gives it to him once he has it. He's getting it from his daughter. That right he could yashin. Hilchach mivanosan leimatzal miftri. Therefore, you couldn't pater the perpetrator from a korban shvua, from the word v'nosan, because in fact it's his already. And therefore, v'nosan v'shas mivikichesh umishum de'ikriknas. And therefore, the only reason why there wouldn't be a korban shvua on there is because this payment originated from a knas. So she was nenash. She was bedin als naira, but the money wasn't actually handed over to the father yet. And before the money got handed over to the father, ubagro, she became a bagris. So we say the money is instantly hers, even though she doesn't have it in her hands yet. Umesan, then she died, so her father yashined her, even though it's not in his hands yet. The husband kikayaris aviyamino didakayaris. There, the father's not getting it directly from the perpetrator, and then it's not his until it's in his hand. Rather, he's getting it through Yerusha of his daughter, where it's his, even though it's not in his hands. If that's the case, what does it mean when Reb Shimon said in the Brisa, Yatu elu shein knas, these items are knas, and therefore there's no korban shvu on them? If it's speaking of achar hamad bedin, mamaynu. In fact, it's mamay. So why does the Brisa use the lashon that these are knas? Zok Gemara, Reb Nachman Yitzchak, Yatu elu sheikron knas. All the Brisa means to say is Reb Shimon holds that all these items, there's no chiyuv carrying the chemesh v'asham of a korban shvua, because although right now they are regular moment, but they came from a chiyuv of knas, and therefore there'll be no din of the kichesh, there'll be no din of korban shvua on all of these items. Okay, let's stop here, and we will be mamshech mitzvah tomorrow.
Okay, so let me tell you the story.
Go ahead.
So ich weiß, gemurde, that the Yaakov Kamenetsky hat sich gemitschet, mamisch fin yeshiva an. And etliche, I don't know how many years, 20, 30 years. And ich weiß, oder sie gewinnt Sibis, oder sie gewinnt Jevumis. Und ich weiß, ich denke nicht, welche Blatt.
Maybe it was this kasha.
What?
Maybe it was this kasha.
We could say he became a Magachir, and he was zittering, wenn tun mit seinem Blatt, wo es geht hin, versteht es nicht. Schön, es kommt nicht, but was soll man tun? Jetzt es kommt, the night before, het kalt mein Blatt, het geweggesetzt, ich muss nur bauen schon, ich beter helfen. Het geweggesetzt, het gelernt, und sie gegangen, het verstanden, Bescheid. Kommt der nächste Tag in Schie, und sagt, Rabbi sei. Sie seht aus, dass du zwei dienen. Limit der Teure ist Limit der Teure. Auf der Stück habe ich mich gedacht, Mädchen. Aber Panusse kommt von der Eibischte. Also ich darf so, aber nur, ich kann nicht gar nicht, ich muss mich aufsuchen von dem Magazin. Hast du dasselbe gesagt? Seht aus, Limit der Teure hat sich mit der Mädchen der 22 Jahre. Gewann durch die Schiebe, jetzt hat der Menschen gehabt, sie hat nicht mehr. It's a real story.
Now that you told me the story, I remember hearing that story. That's right. When it comes to Panusa, the devotion takes care of you. So once you learn the virtue of Panusa, the Daibisha gives it to you easier, because Panusa can finish.
Aber weißt du, das ist doch andere Maße. Aber jetzt, wenn du sie gewähnt, ich denke, ob es eine Rumäne, die kommen dort, ob es eine Zadig dort hat gebeten, darf ein Yeshia, einmal nicht. Schön, hat ich gefragt, was darfst du nicht allein? No, it's a guy to be slandish. Because the point for the mass is that Meile ich darf es stehen, aber etet es war Panus, something like that, you know.
I just has to answer you.
Huh?
I just has to answer you.
Ja, und jetzt, als ich gesagt habe, ich sage ein scheine Wort, ich meine, eine von der Visions hat gesagt, man sagt bei Menschen, nur als ich ein Lölda mit das Busse, und dann Lölda, ja, Bussam kim jod kam na, ja, Psycha, ich war gut. Das ich wenn, ich denke, ich wollte eine von der Friedliche Visions hat so der Merchaim oder eine von Fried. Kids, ich komme nach Stutt, weiß doch, der habe ich mit vier Tischen, hat alles. Später kommt mit Quittlich. So, hat ihm eine gefragt, Rebbe, wieso kannst du sagen, Leute, macht das Busse und Dom? Ich sage, ich muss sagen, das ist doch Panus, der Geist redet, wie deine Kette. Hat gesagt, no. Hat gesagt, ich bete der Beinschleulam, als ich Panus, als ich sage, sie Aishi, ich komme aus, als er nicht verfried, bei Kim ich kann mal tun, Ich arbeite, klingt so wie die, wenn du fixst Air Conditioner. Ja, keiner geht gespart und so, dann arbeite, so das ist mein. Aber ich bete der Bunschleul im Ochet, nicht nur das, als wenn ich bete, ich schiere Bunsch helfen right away. Weil nicht, ist die Geld der Halvue. Geht mich schon jetzt, und die Schiere kommt erst später. Also ich Bunschleul, Leul, der macht das so verdammt. Also ich soll arbeiten, Leul, der mach es, kommt right away.
Who said this?
Einer von der Vision zu reden. Oder der Merchaim, oder whatever, einer von dir. Sehr gut.
Very good.
Okay.